Just let me know when I stop.
Yeah, it will hear it better.
Okay. So I am doing currently masters on dance, and the name of the master is Corio Mundus, International Master of Dance as Practice, Knowledge, and Heritage. So this program comes mostly from the idea of dance as intangible cultural heritage, and originally it had mostly to do with folk dance and social dance, but it has been like spreading and getting more broad and into also every kind of dance. I was trained as a ballet dancer, modern dance techniques, and so as a student of this master, I proposed this research about contact improvisation from anthropology and this field, which is ethnochoreology. Um, so complex, it has so many things going on. So I am based on the descriptions of Cynthia Novak and Sally Baines, which refer to the beginnings of contact improvisation in the United States. So then I started to think, well, how it is contact improvisation practiced nowadays? What are the special features that make contact improvisation special these days? And I was also inspired by this studies of philosophy of dance and dance phenomenology. So I was started to get ideas about how a body is trained and how are the movement techniques inscribed in bodies, and also being aware that in each culture has a special way of discipline, how to discipline the body. On every culture there are different bodily features. So I proposed a research, which is the name is the convergence of movement techniques in context improvisation, in which I have been asking about people's personal experience and how they got interested in context improvisation, and that's going on. I am doing my field work here, and that's why I consider it important to come and talk about it. I proposed multi-sited ethnography, which means that knowing that there were so many during the summer, there were so many festivals, intensives, and things like this going on. I went to Barcelona in July. There was a summer meeting there of context improvisation. And now I am here, and I chose this festival because from the pre-workshop to the teachers meeting and the festival, it was quite long enough for me to get to know the place, to get some familiarity with people, and been appreciating it. And I'm also using visual material as filming and pictures, and yeah, I am on the process of gathering material, basically, and yes, I think that's most important information. And if you have questions, or are we going to have a?
You have 30 seconds left.
One
question.
Where are you from?
Guatemala.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where do you study that?
It's an international Erasmus master. So I studied in Norway, in the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, in the University of Szeged, in Clermont-Ferrand University, and in Roehampton.
Wow.
Oh.
So nomadic.
Yes.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Right, so the camera is pointing towards me. I guess it's my time to speak. So I'm gonna start by abstracting a couple of ideas from Drafting Interior Techniques by Steve Paxton. There's two ideas that catch my interest particularly. One is the idea that content improvisation can be used to train consciousness, and the other one is this thing where Steve is constantly throughout the text, asking himself, what is the use, what is the finality, the functionality of this? It's as if he was saying, we train consciousness through content improvisation, but what for? So he says even things like, this moment of consciousness is an opportunity to learn, and it has a positive use. So he uses those words, and that relates to some ideas from different neuroscientists nowadays that think that consciousness has evolved to help us self-regulate in terms of homeostasis, which homeostasis means that we are constantly finding an internal balance on the face of the constant external change that is happening around us. So in mindfulness, we have been thinking, I've just arrived, but the academics in mindfulness have been thinking, how is it that mindfulness, a technique that trains awareness, how is it that it works in so many different diagnoses? So there's a lot of evidence now, but not enough so that we know exactly how it works, but we can make some hypotheses on how we think it might be working. And so my teacher and one of the persons I am very inspired by, she developed this model on the mechanisms of change of how mindfulness works. And she said, well, we start by training attention, and this attention allows us to develop self-awareness or meta-awareness, how she calls it. And this awareness is what is helping us self-regulate, as I've said before, that some neuroscientists think that awareness helps us regulate. And this self-regulation is leading us to have better well-being, greater well-being. Now, this model does work with the conception that we have in the Asaf rank here with that Varela said in the first place as mindfulness as a portable self-laboratory to get to understand how is it that the mind works. And is this therapy? Is this emotional learning, education? I don't know. I think I want to go very gentle in these terms and not use them yet, but I like the idea that we are experimenting with our own experience to see how is it that the mind works. And in terms that this exploration is leading us to greater well-being, there's the work by Lemmer Schmidt, I was saying it wrong, he's come to the festival on other occasions, and he's related the idea of contact improvisation to well-being. He does it through the idea of flow and mindfulness. And so what I was thinking is, of course, we have no idea how is it that a practice of joint improvisation, such as contact improvisation, works. We have no idea of the mechanisms underlying it. It is very complex, and I think we're gonna need years and years of research to understand this phenomena. But I've been thinking, well, just as an idea, what if I try to see how the model of my teacher would work in a social level? So how would it be an idea of social mindfulness? And so I thought, well, maybe instead of training attention, we're training our ability to join our attention. So joint attention. Then through that, we are training ourselves to be empathic, which is, following some authors, we could say it is a more evolved construct for awareness. It is social awareness. And that allows us to co-regulate better and leading us to greater well-being, perhaps. And so what I what? Is that 5 minutes? Can I continue just a little?
Yes.
And so I'm gonna come back to the functionality of contact improvisation. Why do we do this? And I'm gonna read a quote by Maturana and Varela, Francisco Varela, and they say, "The creation of knowledge, the understanding that facilitates human coexistence, is the greatest, most urgent challenge that we face nowadays." So there is this urgency for social, I don't want to say education, as I've said. I want to go very gentle in these terms of therapy or education, but it is true that perhaps contact improvisation or joint improvisation have a role in helping us create a more compassionate and empathic society. So what I've been doing this last year is I was trying to develop this program on social emotional learning and creativity. Most programs on social emotional learning have been created from a very rational point of view. So they think of us as computers and they give us pieces of paper to fill up and know how not to punch someone and be kind. But I believe that we need to develop programs based on experience. That experience is the center of our learning. And yeah, so my program consists on mindfulness and contact improvisation to teach this social emotional, and I don't want to say teach either, because I don't think I'm teaching anything. I'm just creating this environment, and that's it. And I just want to say two things. One, that contact improvisation is still evolving, and we're yet to see, perhaps we don't see much changes on the shape of it, but the how we train it and how we practice it, I think it's going to change a lot in the next years. And the last thing is, thank you so much, especially Asaf, because I'm fascinated and incredibly passionate about the topic of the shared experience and what is this thing that happens to us when we dance together, or when we live together. And this experience of being here with the team, the research team, is just amazing. And thank you. Thank you, the festival.
Alex.
Can I come somewhere with a bit more shadow? Otherwise, there will be.
If you sit on this pillow, it's perfect.
Okay, good. Then I come here. Okay. Yeah. So where to start? Okay, beginning. So I'm Alex. I'm studying clinical psychology. So in the end, I will be a therapist in the hospital. And I have an education as a body therapist. So I use in therapy and psychotherapy, I work with the body of people, and in order to reflect their diseases or their whatever problem or issue they bring with. And I also ended up in research because sometimes I need to be a nerd and do statistics, and I like it. So I ended up in research on extreme environments. And now you're all going to be, what has this to do with contact? It has a lot to do with contact. But first of all, what is an extreme environment? So I define as an extreme environment an environment in which you find several aspects, such as limitations, or where you find borders which are overcrossed, or personal borders which are overcrossed, or you might feel uncomfortable and insecure. You have maybe new experiences, or also excitements, challenges. So there are all kinds of factors which create an extreme environment. And if we have everything I've just listed now, we'll find these in contact improvisation. So I define also contact improvisation, or going into contact with another person is kind of going into an extreme environment, because this is an unknown space. We don't know how to deal with it. We have to adapt, maybe we have to adjust, we have to find out, we have to breathe. Yeah, it creates all kind of bullshit and mess in our brains. We all experience that, especially when beginning to train the form. And also contact improvisation inspired me a lot in my other work. So I learned stuff from there which I could like directly just put in my other work, and I really love this correlation. And yeah, so what do we do with the extreme environments? Actually, so I have some nerdy spaces where I work. So one thing is I train people who want to go to Mars. It's not a joke. So we do Mars simulations in certain yeah. I like rockets. And so yeah, so we train, actually it's interesting because we train people who aim to go to Mars, and we train them in analog simulations. And what we have, if we break down everything and we take the fancy part away, is that we have two groups, one on Earth and one on Mars, and they have to cooperate. Thing is, if you call to Mars, it takes 20 minutes until the message arrives, so communication has to be pretty clear, pretty precise, and pretty empathic as well. And so what I did there is I developed a program, actually how we do team building with the people. And we use contact improvisation. I don't tell them that I do it, but I do it. To train those teams, to train nonverbal understanding, to train how to communicate, to how to express personal limitations or borders. And last year we had a study where we analyzed these programs, and we analyzed what happened with the people, and they all named, in the statistics they all named, they named that the degree of empathy and the degree of being conscious and aware and situational aware of another person increased, or another group, that it increased. So actually we can take things we learn in contact improv also and to bring it to a group of engineers, and it will work completely, and it's pretty nice to see that. Don't tell them that it's named contact improvisation. Don't do that.
What happens if you tell them?
They would get maybe a little bit slightly afraid of hippies doing crazy things to them. But yeah, so I usually call it just team building, and yeah, this is also what I do. Yeah, in therapy I also don't say we do dance now. I just say we do some movement / sports, something. So because if you say dance, then the guys run away and stuff like that. So just take it easy. Is some better. And another aspect I really like to work on, and this is so super interesting, Google it, there are nice videos online, is virtual reality and technology. Is the question, I know it's really cheeky, is the question, how does technology affect us? And now everyone is also like, what does this have to do with contact improvisation? What does it have to do with body or embodiment? And like yesterday we had a nice talk, and they mentioned all kind of stuff like politics, racism, sexuality, like all the big shit on this planet, and they forgot technology. And I'm just sitting in front of technology right now, and it affects me. And of course it affects all of us. We all have smartphones, and it will get even worse because now we start to have these Google glasses, these virtual reality things, and they are really nice experiments, and we do that at university as well, where you have two people and both have like a virtual glass, and what we can do with it is to swap bodies. So I gonna have a glass, and I gonna see what you see, and you're gonna see what I see. And I might look down on me, and I gonna have your body, and you might look down on you, and you have my body. And there are several studies on that running. How do the perception of the body changes? And they're awesome. I finished my sentence. And there were studies where they showed that racism decreases if you have a body with another color. There are studies where they show that empathy for people with disability increases if you know how to, or if you have the experience to go in a wheelchair. And this is all the kind of stuff I'm working in, and I would say I'm super influenced by contact. And what is like the sub line or the message out of this is like, contact for me is not just this festival bubble, which I enjoy also, but it's also take it into the other worlds. Maybe if you work in other environments or other things, you can include it anywhere, and it fits totally. But don't name it, just take it. That's it.
Where
where do you work?
So I'm based in Cologne and slash Witten. Yeah, Germany. The astronauts are in Austria.
And in Mars.
I know, Marcelo. Not yet, but we work.
Technology chose you, May.
Okay.
Technology.
I'm Marika. I'm presenting my research, master research at the dance department in Paris. I'm finishing and I'm presenting here because following the laboratory and the presentation of the research project, I found that there's some kind of similarity or convergences. I'm working on the practice of Deborah Hay and Kirsty Simpson, that you certainly know, I don't know, maybe, from my inner perspective, talking about my inner, my experience in those practices that I have been following for several years. And the focus on that, I mean, the entry for me is the relation between their terminology, their words, what they say to invite people into movement. So it's in the moment of practice, knowing that both of them, for their practice, they call it practice performance. So there's a link, a very strong, between their practice in studio and their performance. Anyway, I'm interested in the practice during the studio, like could be here inside, and to try to analyze their choices of language, words more precisely, and terminology, because neither one or the other talk about never ever about technique of dance or whatever impulse or whatever dynamic or whatever terms that are close to or that goes with a technique of dance. So they really step aside of this area, and they invite us to move, and we get to movement and we need to dance. So I'm interested in what kind of body they create, what kind of imaginary, I don't know, sensory or whatever gesture comes out of this invitation. So yeah, and there's the link with the research, because I'm trying really, I found a way to talk about my inner experience, which is kind of what we do all the time. In CI has been born in that sense. But going even more deeply into coming back into the real moment where I was living that precise, that specific, when I heard some words, what changes it's me, what kind of really identified what happens in the sensory system. But I don't even talk about that. Actually, I really go into deep back into my mind and try to recall what happens, which is reminding me a little bit of this interview micro phenomenological whatever stuff, which is quite interesting. And the funny thing is that we assume when we all do this that we know how to talk about practice or whatever. We have collected a huge amount of knowledge about a way of talking about our experience. Nevertheless, when I gave this paper to the university and kind of gave it like that, almost apologizing, not saying that it's not in the academic frame, I'm really a bad student, and I was kind of, it's a starting point, and then the feedback of that was really extremely positive. So first surprise, and then we must say maybe that in France there's not this huge experience about talking from that perspective, in a perspective. It's much more aesthetic or performance or choreographic oriented, France in general, the dance studies. So yeah, that was a huge surprise. And then beside that, I mean, the aim of my research is kind of pulling the dance, the practice of dance, towards more somatic, so towards another dimension, which is not formal. And the interesting thing with this format of writing is that I found a somatic way of writing about that. But for me, it was kind of really a great discovery of that. And I think that's the frame that was interesting, that they are interested in that. So yes, I don't know, it's over.
What is that gonna do? Because is there time?
Hmm?
Is there time? No.
5, just
5 minutes.
Okay, we have one question.
Yeah.
Ask one.
What is a semantic way of writing down? I had never heard that. So.
Maybe you can make a study group.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. We could just leave the question if you want.
There's even a
No,
reminder
because
dances about that.
I recall really I went back because I didn't know, have no idea about how to, I didn't want to say, and then I felt that, and then she said this, and so it changed. I didn't want, I was bored, I think, like writing, imagining. So I just went, I sat down for Kirsten, not for Deborah, because she's much more vertical in her dance. So I really sat down, I said, okay, and I'm here. I talk as I was there, and actually I'm not anymore. So I really go through my, and by sitting there and writing, I have the sensation, really the physical, the perception,
So
physical.
you write about how you feel your body dance, or you write how someone else is
No,
dancing?
mine.
You explain.
Yeah, but as I go back, as I was there, and then I think is that while writing, I recalling the experience, your body's dancing, sitting and writing, and I was feeling the same thing as I was in space at that moment.
Can I sneak in an advertisement in there? Because now it's in the library. There's a new publication. It's a digital publication also, but the printout is in the library called